Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox Recording here. Now, just recently, I had a great conversation with my good friend Bobby of the YouTube channel Raytown Productions. Now, if you're not familiar with Bobby's channel, he's got a great YouTube channel where he dives deep into mixing and mastering techniques. There's a link below to his channel in this video's description. Now, the one thing that Bobby and I have in common is that we both produce and mix independent artists. And in this conversation, not only do we dive deep into our experiences mixing and recording independent artists, but we discuss the changes that we've seen happening in recent years. And this led to a very interesting conversation and question. And that question is the sound of modern metal production starting to change? And ultimately, is it finally starting to die out? With that said, let's dive into it. Let me ask you a question. So I know we've talked about this. You these days you mainly just mix, right? Mix and master. So you don't do you record at all or produce
I
at all?
rarely record. I love recording. I love working with the band. Dedicating, shutting everything else out. Me plus band.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a record. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I rarely do that.
Really? Wow.
It's just too difficult with my work arrangement. If I have taken 10 days off of work to fly to an area to record a band.
Yeah, nice.
I've done that. And it was the most happy 10 days of my entire life.
Yeah. Because you can focus just on that.
Yes. And there's no distractions. And it's just hanging out and just trying to be creative and make art. And it was incredible.
Yeah.
So now it's I cater to people who kind of can record themselves to some degree, send me stuff, and then they just don't want to put the energy or the time into doing it, or they don't find it creatively fulfilling, and they just want to get a sound, right? So that's kind of my niche. And so I've been doing that, and it's, like I said, sustainable, but it's not necessarily exactly what I want to do, but it works, and it scratches my creative itch as well.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have the music balanced to science, I would go freaking crazy.
Totally. With these projects, I'm curious about this. So, are they sending you live drums ever, or is it almost always programmed?
Dude, almost never.
Really?
I get so excited when I get a live drum because I get a fingerprint then. I get a fingerprint of a band when I get live drums.
Yeah.
If I just get sent MIDI or if I just get sent programmed drums, I mean, it can sound sonically good, but it's not interesting. It's just I don't know. It's hard to explain it because I think you and I grew up in an era where drums were real. Every album was real, and it had a vibe. Yeah. And that vibe is not in modern rock and metal productions. It's not there. It's a different type of vibe. It's I don't know. It's just when you hear one shots over and over, it's just, I don't know. It's just it doesn't. This is how when I think of it is the music that has the flaws in it, but the flaws are not big enough to be distracting. That music becomes timeless for me. I can go back and listen to something I listened to 20 years ago, and it's God, it sounds so good. Yeah. But it sounds good because it is ooey, oozing with emotion, and you could feel the band vibing off each other in the song. There's a connection where modern music, and I'm guilty of this too because I over edit and I do everything to a grid, and because I'm kind of perfectionist, I want everything tied together. But we have to be careful doing that because very quickly we lose the natural connection the band has with each other. Yes. And the connection that's there when they're playing their instruments in a live setting, or when they're feeding off of, the very subtle cues of a drummer pushing or pulling. I almost want to just take my metronome and throw it out the window. But you can only do that with certain bands.
Dude, right? You just took the words out of my mouth because it's funny, no, because I agree 100%. Especially when you go back and listen to anything Ross Robinson produced in the 90s. Yeah. Unbelievable. I have such a greater appreciation for that stuff now as a 40-year-old than I ever did, as a kid. But here's the problem in the modern day, right? And you touched upon it. It's that the band has to be freaking good. and they have to actually play together. And nowadays projects, even big projects, are so fragmented. A lot of times when bands are in the studio recording, even label bands, they've never played these songs together live. They all write their own demos in their own houses. A lot of times the demo sort of becomes the final record. Sometimes drums are done last. So you have to use the grid as the reference because there is no other reference because they've never played the songs together. Or like a lot of the bands that maybe you work with, and I certainly have when I do mix only projects, it's like one guy in the band. So like he's the guitar player, he programs all the drums. So it's like, it's hard to have that natural drum thing when there's no real drums on it. Or you get the tracks where, the drums are unedited, but they're just crappily played. So it's it's tough. No, I totally agree, man. That's why I love doing live recording when it's a solid band, like a band in a room. It's not, of course, it's not going to sound like Sleep Token or friggin' Spirit Box, but it's not supposed to, And I love, dude, I actually, are you into Spirit Box?
Yeah.
Love them. Unbelievable. Sick. Some of the best, one of my favorite bands of the past 10 years by far, but like drums don't sound like that in real life.
No.
It's cool. I love it.
It's all Zach, dude. It's Zach Cervini. It's his sound, right? It's like he's like super crazy, cracky, roomy, insane drums, right?
And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. But that's like all my reference songs, right? It's like
But like you were saying, but that's so different than the other thing you were talking about.
Right.
It's
I'm with you. And this is the dilemma, right? Is we have a little bit of perspective now.
Yeah.
So now it's like, all right, well, like I love how clean, clear, powerful, punchy, in like full spectrum, the new like modern metal and rock production sound. But sometimes like it's missing something and it's like hard to put your finger on it. And it's like it's missing the nuance of bands vibing off of each other and causing a groove that you can't make, that only exists when the bands have played so much together that they know exactly what's happening and they capture that. But it's so hard to do that now too, because like you said, everybody's fragmented. Like, it's hard to get people to just play in a room together to like develop that natural sense of groove.
Yeah.
And so
it's tricky.
There's this weird thing that feels missing, but it's so sonically pleasing and like perfect and amazing that it's like you're kind of torn, right? It's like, it's a weird thing. But I think the answer to it, at least the what I've been telling myself is listen. This is my favorite advice. This is how to know if you've over edited stuff or if you've under edited stuff.
Yeah.
It's and even mixing. This works for mixing as well. Distract yourself, do something like play the song and go and do something else. Like go write an email, go and read an article, go scroll on your phone. If you get pulled away from what you're doing because you heard something weird,
then it's bad.
Or then the job is not done. You either screw up the mix or it's not edited right.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you could just solo the drums and just play the drums. And if something like pulled you away from a moment, then it needs to be addressed. Yeah. But if it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go in and micromanage the little push and pull that might naturally occur in the drummer. Yeah. Right. You might not need to grid everything. Yeah. And so like, I guess it comes down to like what you as a producer, what your vision is, right? Or the band. Yeah. And then try to maximize that from the conversation you might have with the band or your own vision for your music. But just because everybody else is gridding things doesn't mean you have to.
Very true. So, that's true. Well, it becomes tricky though, especially if you're working with a band that they like those modern records and that's their standard. Yeah.
That's the vision, right? So it's like you want it gridded and like every kick and snare to be exactly on top. Hell yeah. I got you, Yeah, you're exactly right. Right.
What's also tricky is when you're working, let's say you're mixing a project that has all programmed instruments, program bass, maybe program drums, and they want it to sound like old school black metal. That's raw. It's like, oh my God, that's almost harder than just recording a real raw band. Cause it's like, dude, like even with how good as MIDI drums are these days, like if you want a nice polished record, easy. Easy.
Yeah.
Even if you want something relatively modern, easy. But if you wanted to sound gritty, and I actually had a student, shout out to Mike, drawing a blank on his last name right now, but this guy was like a master at making MIDI drums sound real in like a raw kind of gritty kind of way. But it ain't easy, man. It takes a lot of work with dynamics and like fills and pushing and pulling. So that's one challenge I think a lot of home recordists have that don't have access to live drums and don't have the skill to record live drums or don't know a drummer, but they want that old school kind of like, dude, imagine trying to make a home recording sound like the Bad Brains or something like that. Like, how would
it's a nightmare. Yeah.
Or I should say a home recording with MIDI instruments. Obviously, it'd be easy if you have a good band that can kind of play like the Bad Brains and mic them up right and stuff. But like, it's an interesting topic for sure.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, make it sound like 90s hardcore. It's like, sorry, like I don't even know how you would even approach that. It's like we just got to get a few mics and get you to beat the hell out of your drums and like be pissed off about something. Then they'll sound like that.
And rehearse. Well, dude, were you an E-Town fan?
I wasn't a huge fan. Yeah.
Oh, I grew up. I loved E-Town Concrete, dude. And I wasn't a big hardcore guy. I was more of like a metal guy. But for some reason, I really liked E-Town Concrete. And after getting into production and doing this for over a decade, I listened to some of those old records. First of all, they all sound amazing still. But there's no click on that. I don't think. Like I think that's them literally playing. They cut those drums live. You could tell. But dude, like the guy's a great drummer. Like he plays with emotion. Like you have to be good to do that. You can't be half-assing it in your bedroom and kind of doing MIDI really quick and sound like it'll never happen in a million years. You're better off trying to sound like Spirit Box at that point. You're better off just gritting everything because you're never going to get that vibe unless you literally play with 3 other guys every day and you block in that way. That's my opinion. So
yeah, no, exactly right. There's certain styles that require a human element in there.
Definitely.
And a lot of the tools that we have now, it's the opposite. It's taking the human element out. It's the default is becoming you suck at your instrument, we'll fix that.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know. Are we crossing over into this new territory where the default is everybody sucks at it? So like we have to put a Band-Aid on it and then use these other tools, and then we're just getting used to the sound of these other tools? Or are we gonna have like some renaissance where we go back to everybody's like tired of everything being too perfect? I'm willing to bet it's gonna go that way.
I agree, dude. And oh my God, it's such an interesting. So back in maybe you have a similar experience. Did you do a lot of metal like 10 years ago? A lot of like metal bands? Okay.
Yes.
I remember, man, like back in 2012, like I went through a phase where hardly anybody even wanted to record live drums because that's when Periphery was really popular and like Gent was big, and everyone wanted that super perfect. It still exists now. Like we were talking about Spirit Box and some of the newer bands, but like I remember drummers like recording young drummers, and like when they would hear the raw drums, they're like, "Why does it sound like that?" And I'd ask like, "Well, what do you mean? We just tracked drums. I didn't mix it yet." And I'm like, well, what do you want it to sound like? And they'll play for me like some modern crazy. I'm like, well, dude, there's like 5 snare samples in that. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, that's not real drums,
that's not
dude.
how it sounds.
That's not what drums sound like in real life. Are you kidding me?
Listen, when you hit the drum, like, does it sound like that to you?
Exactly.
No, you're not in a cave. Like,
but that generation, like that's what sounded right to them because those are the records that they loved and what they grew up on. But I'm starting to notice, man, and it started around 2019 in my local area. A lot of the younger bands I work with, it's the complete opposite. It's all like they're into like, there's one band in particular, they're into like old Kiss, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest.
Hell yeah.
And they're like 22 years old. Another band I worked with recently, this alternative band, female fronted, dude, like they're into like that band Evanescence. Like really nothing new. Everything is pretty old, and that's the aesthetic they want. They don't want friggin' snare drum cannon blast. They want it to sound like those 90s records, but they're kids. So I'm starting to see a lot of that in Jersey, that a lot of the younger kids.
That's awesome.
It's when like, I'm like, well, could you send me your click track, your tempo? And they're like, well, we just play it. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't record on GarageBand or like, cause dude, I went through a phase where like every band had at least one guy that was DAW savvy, every band that like, they either use Guitar Pro for writing or they recorded it in Logic or they recorded demos. Yeah. And I hardly ever come across that now, ever. They record with their iPhone in the studio, like in the corner. Like that's what I've noticed. And I've talked to other people that have experienced. My friend Ben, who's a producer in my local area, he does a lot of death metal bands, a lot of younger bands as well. Hardly anybody does pre-production, and they just go to him.
Death metal? they're not doing pre-pro for death metal?
No,
really?
they just play in a room. Yeah. Weird, right? Really weird.
Yeah, it's definitely kicking back to the good old days.
Yeah.
So maybe, who knows? Maybe this is a cool thing that's happening.
I think it's great, dude. I mean, hey, it's job security.
Bring some of the human element back, baby. Like, let's go.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I do think though that it would be great if well, I mean, I like when a band comes in prepared and they do. I think it's great when bands do pre-pro personally. So maybe that's somewhat of a detriment, but I do like that people are playing together and old school where they're actually jiving together and grooving together and writing the songs together in a room. I think there is a benefit to that for sure. Yeah.
I think you like the pre-pro because that means that they had to all hear what they're actually playing to know that the parts work. I think that's what it really.
Dude, my dream scenario is this. There's a band I work with a lot named Poeta. They're great. Like they're like heavy, but they're also kind of like
You've mentioned this before. Yeah.
Love that band. But they're in their 30s. So I can't even call them like young, but it's the perfect situation because the guitar player is pretty tech savvy and he records all their demos. So when they come to me, they have all the vocals done, all the drums are programmed, all the guitars are worked out. So I'm just re-recording their demos, but with real drums. Maybe we'll tweak parts here and there. Maybe we'll change a vocal melody or something like that. That's the dream scenario because all the tempos are mapped. They literally give me MIDI with the tempos done. It's not like, oh, we got to spend a week figuring out tempos because because that happens when a band just doesn't do any of that pre-pro work. Sometimes figuring out tempos alone for a record could take literally weeks, especially if there are a lot of ebbs and flows in the songs naturally. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. Yeah. And it just throws things off. And then if especially the drummers ever played to like a click track, then like,
oh, dude,
yeah, getting adjusted to it, it's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total nightmare.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, man, and it's definitely it's cool to have been doing this long enough now to see the trends come and go. Right. Like back remember the MySpace deathcore days? I don't know if you remember those days.
Hell yeah, dude. That was my days.
Yeah. The MySpace deathcore days. Then it became Gent, right?
It was all Joey Sturgis stuff.
Yes, yes. Then the Nolly stuff really kind of took over.
Yep.
Now we're in the Spirit Box Sleep Token zone, but there's this branch off of this old school, like gritty hardcore thing simultaneously. It's really interesting. And you're in DC. I don't know if in DC what's going on in the local scene. What's your local scene like?
It's very much like what you're saying. It's like very much like grunge 90s kind of thing. A lot of female fronted and like even number of like male female. Yeah. But it's not really a ton of metal anymore. It's more of this like kind of edgy, shouty, maybe grungy stuff.
I like that. That's cool.
But more melodic, very melodic and catchy. Like, and then like there was even bands where I'm like, these guys sound like Weezer. Like,
I love that, man. That's awesome.
Like, they had like the guitar tone was like dialed in, and not a lot of like super high gain amps, like a lot of cool, weird vintage stuff. There's people that are making their own guitars and stuff. Like we have like a cool, very artsy, very creative scene right now in DC, and it's pretty exciting. But I don't know. I might have also just kind of like slipped out of like the metal world in this area, but I feel like I don't know. What I see coming around in my inbox is not quite metal. I mean, of course, you get all the headlining bands that come through. A lot of that you'll see all those bands come through. But in terms of like local talent, it seems to be very much going backwards. Like
in a good way, though. To me, that sounds like that sounds like it's a good. So these bands, like these grunge bands or these female fronted bands, or these artsy kind of bands, their production that they actually have. It's MIDI drums, a lot of them, or is it real? Like what are they recording themselves? Are they going to producers? What are they doing?
So they either will do it themselves.
Okay.
But usually, like you said, there's like one or two people in the band. They do like their pre-pro stuff.
Okay.
And they'll put out something that sounds professional.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's like the modern sound that we hear like in like the hard rock, like heavy metal genres.
Yeah.
But it very much has a nostalgic like 90s vibe to it.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah, but clearly like there's production done. Like you can tell this drums are augmented with samples.
Yeah.
You can tell but they leave like mistakes, what we would consider like mistakes. Like you'll hear like finger scraping on strings, or like weird feedback in spots, or like, you know, they're very much like capturing a moment or like a performance more so than for it to be technically right. Like I feel like the producers in the area are very much like they want the feeling right more so than the technicalities of it.
Dude, that's a breath of fresh air.
It was like supposed to be, right? Like
the bands have to be good though. They have to be good. That's the catch.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. So I fortunately like I haven't seen a lot of like super sloppy bands. When I say that there are mistakes, it's a mixing engineer or a producer's like version of mistakes.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
The technicalities that could be cleaned up if you wanted to go in and micromanage the session.
Yeah.
But it's tastefully chosen in there for a vibe, not because it's a distraction.
Yeah.
So that's the way to describe it.
Like an Albini kind of deal where like feedback and fret noise and stuff like that. I love, dude, I personally love stuff like that. And I hope that comes back. But my question, as far as this is concerned, are these bands, are they recording themselves? Like what they're putting out, is it what they track themselves? Or do they like you were saying, do they do their own pre-pro? And then these are local producers that they're hiring to do this?
I think they're hiring producers to go through.
Okay.
So like, but they're at the stage that I'm seeing them, they're like basically it's a sold out show in downtown DC at like, I mean, these aren't massive places, but like there's a couple hundred people there. Like
dude, that's a win.
That's like especially for a small venue, it feels crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude. Most people don't make it to that level. That's success in my opinion, for sure.
Yeah. And so they're definitely like they do small local tours and stuff. So they'll go tri-state or like around on the Northeast or something. But like they have their sound and they've interacted with the right people that understand the vision and can kind of help pull it all together for them.
That's exciting, man.
You need that minimum level of quality, and then you can add all the artsy stuff on it, and it's fine. Yeah, you have to hit that threshold, and so that producer is there to make sure that they're crossing that line, and that stuff that drops below it doesn't make it on the album. So it's like no, like we're gonna get it a little bit better. You know, we can do better, and then you guys just let your personality shine through the recording. And
that's amazing. Yeah. That's the kind of work, man, at this point in my life that I'm the most interested in making. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, even if it's a metal band or a hardcore band, like just allowing that natural vibe to shine through as much as possible. Obviously, if it's a project where it's like very fragmented, where like, you know, the drummer came in, never played the songs before, that's a different story. But you can inject some of that even in those situations. But back to your example here, but all these bands are not, as far as you know, sitting at home with Easy Drummer, creating these tracks and releasing them. They are going in as a full. Okay, this is like it's old school.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm happy to see that, man.
Yes. So the pre-pro probably, if I'm being honest, they probably do program stuff and they work things out,
which is actually better because then you can hear it clear. So I think that's a positive.
Right. It's like, oh, actually, your kick drum isn't on the bass. Like maybe we should be thinking about how to lock that in if we want. If not, that's fine. But So then they go in and the album is it's not all MIDI drums for everything. Like there's, like I said, it's that fingerprint when you actually get to put mics on a drum kit, even if you add samples. But every time you have a recording with drums and you use that in an actual mix, you can feel it. Like
I agree.
Right? It's a real thing. It's tangible, and you can pick it out, and it's like it gives it a fingerprint. Yes. Whereas if you just go MIDI everything, program everything, it can sound sonically perfect, sound heavy as hell, awesome. Yeah. But it's not. It doesn't have a fingerprint, right? Unless the vocalist or someone has something so unique, or the band can do something so creative that it gives it a stylistic fingerprint, right? Yeah. But but when you don't have the natural recorded elements there, it always just feels like it's missing something.
Yeah. So, now, my take on it is obviously certain subgenres call for that sound. Like the modern the super modern, crazy tight mechanical metal. Like obviously fake drums are perfect for it because the real drums sound fake anyway. Dude, I'm sure you've heard these records where it's like, oh, this record we use live drums. I'm like, I can't even tell. It sounds the same as when you do fake drum. I'm like, you might as well just use Superior Drummer. But that's fine. That's fine. That's what that subgenre calls for. But me personally, kind of tired of it. I'm kind of tired. Yeah. Like I listen to it still. I'll definitely put it on when I'm working out. But like, dude, I miss, like you were saying, that fingerprint is so huge. And the older I've gotten, especially the last 5 or 6 years, like I'm totally going more in that direction. It's so much more fun for me to like listen to a band and hear like, okay, I want to capture that and maybe meld it slightly, but I want to capture the vibe of what they're about. If the drummer uses a super thin piccolo snare and that's the sound of the band, I don't want to go in there and sample replace it to what I think the snare should sound like. I'd rather, or if they use whatever Fender Twins and they use a jazz Jag, what is that? A Tele or Jazzmaster or whatever. Like I want to capture that in an awesome way, and like sort of like what a guy like Steve Albini would do. And then obviously if you have to fix or quantize certain parts, you could do that. The best of both worlds. So
like one of the things that I love about stuff like that has its fingerprint is I can hear a song and I instantly get like transported to like a time in my life, or like if I was part of the tracking session, I can hear the guitar and I immediately am like, that is the sound in that room.
Yeah.
Like in that one weird room that we put that mic on.
Yes.
And like that, and like you get transported, and it's like, it's almost like a timestamp of like a part of your life.
Yes.
I
agree. Totally.
And like, I mean, you can get the same thing, I guess, with like these other things, but there's something about hearing like a band live that's exactly the same as what it sounded like on the album.
Yeah.
The first band that ever happened to me was Radiohead.
Oh, live, right?
You can hear like, you can just hear like their tuning, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be Paranoid Android, or like you just hear a tiny sound, you're like, that tone is exactly what they captured on this. Yeah. And so that's that fingerprint. Yes. You just have to be able to play, like you have to play good enough where like you can express yourself through your instrument to have that uniqueness, right?
Yeah, it takes work. It's like, the problem is like, unfortunately, if someone is like, I hear people say this a lot. It's like, I'm 45, I'm done playing in bands, I'm tired of dealing with people, I just want to record my own solo record, but I want it to sound like Rush. It's like, well, dude, I'm like, you could do that, but man, it's not going to be a lot of work, and it's probably going to take 15 years of your life. I mean, whatever. But I think that's where it becomes challenging, where expectations sometimes aren't realistic. Like for example, like those Radiohead records. Obviously, the singer's one of the main guys in the band, but they still gelled together as a band. They had an amazing producer. They recorded probably some of that stuff together, I'm assuming, especially on those older records. And there's something to that, man. There's something to that. There's an art to that for sure.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see the trajectory kind of folding back on itself for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see how far it goes. If production goes to shit again, I don't know. I'm going to be sad, but
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think we have too many tools now to like force some level of the minimal standard. You gotta have some sort of standards there.
Yeah. I think right now the vibe I'm getting is that we are in the Nevermind phase. Like, how you had like at the end of the 80s, records were so polished, so fake, big hair, generic. Like you could not get any more generic by the end of the late 80s, right? And then Nirvana comes out, or it was brewing in the underground for a long time, don't get me wrong. But then Nirvana comes out, and that stuff was like not cool overnight, man. Like virtually overnight, like nobody wanted to sound like 80s huge snare drum reverbs. It's like, no, we want to sound like a band again. Like, I think we're starting to get into that zone. It might not be as stark of a contrast. It might not happen as quickly or as drastically, but I could feel it just based on the younger clients I've worked with and the bands hitting me up. It's like, dude, this week I just had a punk band hit me up. I'm like, punk? Like I used to never get punk bands hitting me up, which is weird because I don't have any of that in my portfolio. But I guess that's just the sound that people are going. Like I used to get all gent, deathcore. Now it's like punk, a female fronted rock band that wants to sound 90s. Like what the hell? But I'm here for it, man. I love it. I think it's a breath of fresh air for sure. But the question is this a breath of fresh air? for you. Do you personally prefer the super tight mechanical perfection of modern metal productions, or are you happy to hear that this might be a thing of the past and that things are changing? And in a way, going old school. Let us know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. We would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Now, if you're the type of person that doesn't want to hire a producer like Bobby or I, and you just want to record pro-level results in your home studio, I'm sure you know by now, it ain't easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because so many home studio owners make the same mistakes over and over and over again. They blame their gear. They're constantly searching YouTube for answers to their problems, when in reality, all you need to produce great results is a simple, straightforward system. Now, if you'd like to learn my entire system for pro-level productions in a nice, simple PDF format, you could have direct access for absolutely free to my polished production checklist. It's a simple, to-the-point checklist where I outline my entire process for producing a song from absolute scratch, regardless of gear. Because in the modern day, you could achieve amazing results with the cheapest gear on the market. I promise you. With that said, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive with Bobby and I. And until next time, drink that Rippin' Roasters.